Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Ayşe Süberker. The streets of Azerbaijan's capital Baku were jubilant as word of a peace deal set in. After 6 weeks of fighting between Azerbaijan and Armenia over the occupied territory of Nagorno-karabakh, an agreement to end the conflict has been reached. But given past ceasefires falling apart before the ink even dried, will this time be any different? Nigar Arpadarai explains.
Celebrating victory. Hundreds filled Baku's streets after hearing the war had ended. After 6 weeks of fighting, a ceasefire has been agreed to.
Today is a historic day for our country. Today, the Armenian-Azerbaijani Nagorno-karabakh conflict is coming to an end. I think that the recently signed tripartite statement will be the last point in resolving the issue.
The truce was brokered by Russia and signed by the warring parties. But it's Azerbaijan that gets the most out of this deal. Baku will hold on to any territories recaptured in occupied Karabakh. And according to President Aliyev, his military has retaken 300 settlements from the region. Turkish and Russian soldiers will be deployed to monitor the ceasefire.
Türkiye, anlaşmanın uygulanmasını gözetmek ve denetlemek üzere bölgede kurulacak ortak barış gücünde Rusya ile birlikte yer alacaktır.
But fury from the other side. Protesters attacked the parliament building in Armenia's capital, Yerevan. They say agreeing to the truce is a betrayal. And some demanded the resignation of Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. Overwhelmed by Azerbaijan's military, Pashinyan says he was left with few options.
In the existing situation, there was no chance of making another decision. I plan to go into more details over why and what was the reason behind the last month's events. I can't do it right now for one simple reason. Because stopping military actions is the main process right now, and if I say something, I can endanger people.
The peace deal was signed shortly after Azerbaijan took control of Shusha, the second largest city in Karabakh. Armenia's leadership was worried that if the war continued, the whole of the territory could have been lost. The latest outbreak of fighting is part of a decades-old conflict, and it all centers on the occupied region of Nagorno-karabakh. The area falls within Azerbaijan's borders, but most of the people living there are ethnically Armenian. War broke out in 1988 after separatists tried to seize the region. Following a ceasefire in 1994, Karabakh was left under Armenian control. And now the latest ceasefire. But seeing how past agreements to stop the fighting have failed, will this be enough to prevent another war? Nigar Arpadarai, Straight Talk.
And joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Michael Doran. He is a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. And from Baku, Nigar Arpadarai. She is a member of the Azerbaijani parliament. A warm welcome to you both. It's good to have you on the Straight Talk. So, Nigar, what could you tell us about the mood in Azerbaijan after this peace agreement was brokered?
Thank you very much for having me. Well, it's definitely a big victory for us. It's a great moment for our nation, for our country, because it's a step forward, but there is still a lot of work to be done. Because we are still to return our refugees back, so we have to build our local governments as system. But overall, of course, we celebrate, people are happy because our number one priority was to restore our territorial integrity and to give a chance to our refugees to go back. So this is the, and from the videos, you can see how happy people are, because even myself, my grandma was from Shusha, and I always wanted to be able to go there because these are our lands, and we always wanted to be able to go to our lands.
All right.
So it's the justice that have been restored.
Okay, so Michael, how will this peace deal reshape the balance of power in the region? And has this agreement rendered the Minsk group as well as the European Union's role irrelevant?
I think it has certainly eclipsed the Minsk group. The Minsk group may become relevant again, but for the moment, there's been a very significant change in the whole pattern of power in the region. The big change here is the arrival of Turkey as the major player on the Azerbaijani side. Turkey hasn't completely supplanted Russia, but it has earned a place for itself at the table with Russia. So the key game on the ground is between Russia and Turkey. With the Minsk group, the other members of the Minsk group, the United States and France, operating mainly as bystanders.
So, Nigar, you just mentioned the return of refugees and setting up of regional governments in the region, but does this agreement entail any risks? Are there any sticking points that should be dealt with by Azerbaijan and Turkey? And do you believe this agreement safeguards Azerbaijan's territorial integrity for the long term?
Well, again, this peace deal, which ends the military hostilities in the occupied territories, is the demonstration of Azerbaijan's will to reach sustainable peace and to restore Azerbaijan's territorial integrity. Because our goal was to restore our territorial integrity. We've been in negotiations with Armenia for almost 30 years. And we've been coming close, but every time we've been going to some practical steps, Armenia would come up with any excuses to keep status quo and to turn it into a frozen conflict, which was unacceptable for us. So for this moment, again, this is the continuation of our coherent policy based on respect of international law and our constitution. But as I said, we still have lots of things to be done. We still have to make sure that our refugees go back and etc. So there's the whole way.
So Michael, will Armenia, given its current political problems at home, be able to abide by this agreement? And what's next for Pashinyan?
Well, one of the most interesting aspects of this whole war was the tension between Pashinyan and Putin. And I think that a lot of people believe, with good reason, that Putin used this war as an opportunity to discipline Pashinyan, and that Russia comes out stronger, Armenia comes out weaker, and I think the future of Mr. Pashinyan is very much in doubt.
So, Nigar, do you believe Azerbaijan's... you can continue on that, if you like.
Yeah, if you ask me, I think that there's a big question for me whether Armenia is at all capable of sticking this agreement achieved, because the signs for now that it will not happen, because Armenia is turning into a rogue state. I keep repeating that because you see what is happening there. Their president came up saying that he had no idea about this agreement and the statement made. So for me, it's a big question whether Armenia will be able to keep at all to stick to it, because again, what is happening there, it's quite disturbing, and implications for Pashinyan is that well, he's again not capable of deciding and implementing in a consistent manner, because his statements always vary. He lies in media. We've seen that throughout this period that he has been in power. So again, to us, after everything that Armenia's government has done, the only concern whether they will keep us. I think that they have to revisit all that they have done. So they have to reconsider their politics.
But on the other hand, Nigar, do you believe that Azerbaijan's operations were deliberately cut short after the liberation of Shusha, which would have proceeded to Hankendi, which is dominated by ethnic Armenians? What's your take on that?
No, again, in the ideal world, there should be no need for peacekeepers, because we are a strong state and we are capable of providing our people with safety and prosperity. But again, there is some process that is going on. The future of, I think that our government does not aim to harm anyone, and the fact that peacekeepers are there is the proof to that. So again, I think that for us, it's a very big victory. It's a step forward. And again, I would like to reconfirm that our territorial integrity is restored.
So, Michael, what impact will this outcome have on relations between Turkey and Russia? They're on the opposing sides in various conflicts like Libya and Syria. Will they be more dependent or mistrustful with each other?
I think this is absolutely the key question for me personally, for somebody who's interested in the American role in all of this. The Turkey and Russia are now circling each other like fighters. And one moment they stop the fight, another moment they start the fight. The question is, where's the United States in this? Because at a certain point, Russia is going to try to return to the status quo ante in the Caucasus, where it is the hegemonic power. Right now, it's the dominant power, and it has to share power with Turkey. The United States should come in behind Turkey. The United States and the West should come in behind Turkey and increase its ability to deter Russia, an ability that is remarkable. It's a huge change in the politics of the region, and it's a positive change for the West.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the West has been distracted and is not paying attention.
So, Nigar, what's your take on that? Will we see a waning or increase of Russian influence in region, considering the role its peacekeepers will play?
Well, what we see, we've seen that the essence of the conflict resolution burden is on shoulders of the sides, Azerbaijan and Armenia. And in order to be sustainable, it's on the shoulders of large regional countries. And two countries are Russia and Turkey. Of course, we wanted to see more international community, but international community failed to resolve this conflict because 4 UN Security Council resolutions remained unenforced. So yes, Turkey and Russia are 2 big countries in the region, and their involvement, I think, has the positive thing. And also the difference between so we are trying to sort this out within our region. And the difference between our approach and Armenia's approach is that Azerbaijan wants positive engagement with our neighbors and achieve sustainable resolution to the conflict. Armenia wanted to widen the geography of the conflict and drag in third countries into the conflict. So this is the difference.
Yeah. So details are still being worked out. Michael, do you believe Russia is trying to sideline Turkey from this whole process?
Well, I think they're trying to get the upper hand, and I think Putin played his hand very well in that regard. My assumption, I don't have any clear information about it, but my assumption is that the Azerbaijanis stopped their campaign because they were given a red line by Putin. They were afraid that if they went into Khan Kandi, that the Russians would intervene directly. So the Russians were able to convince the Azerbaijanis to come to the table by offering some very significant sweeteners. The voluntary in quotation marks withdrawal of the Armenian forces from some of the occupied territories and the corridor to Nakhchivan. We'll have to wait and see how well that corridor plays out.
Yes.
That could be a major stabilizing factor, but the Russians might play games with it, and they might play games with the corridor. They might play games with terrorist attacks in Karabakh. There's all kinds of ways that they could fudge on this deal. We have to see how it plays out.
And Nigar, what do you make of some of the international media outlets' zero coverage of the events and their narrative that Turkey sent Syrians to fight the war there?
No, again, the whole story with Syrians, with mercenaries, is really ridiculous. And Turkey is, Turkey is our closest ally and has been supporting us politically throughout the process. And we have military cooperation deals with many countries of the world. And the whole discussion of mercenaries being in Azerbaijan, this is something that Pashinyan and his government was trying to fake and to convince the West to kind of wake up their medieval crusader, let's say, feelings in them. So it was the fake news all over. And just to add something to Nakhchivan thing, part of Azerbaijan, Nakhchivan was in blockade for 30 years, and deblocking of Nakhchivan for transport routes via Armenia is a very critical step. I just wanted to make this addition that it's by no means step similar to, for example, Lachin corridor. The difference with Lachin corridor is that it is there in order to provide humanitarian link. There is the essence of it. As for Nakhchivan corridor, this is the partial restoration of historical justice and its removal of blockade of part of Azerbaijan from Armenian blockade, let's say.
All right, Nigar, Michael, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining us. There's no question that a Joe Biden presidency will be drastically different than the past 4 years. For allies and foes alike, gone will be the days of U.S. policy through tweet and a transactional form of diplomacy. Instead, many expect President-elect Biden to return to a more institutionalized, rules-based foreign policy. Nowhere will that be more clear than in the Middle East. Under the Trump administration, countries like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Egypt all benefited, despite their questionable records at home and abroad. Traditional allies like Israel could also see a major shakeup. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, one of Trump's most closest allies, had a rocky relationship with the Obama administration, where Biden was vice president. Even U.S. adversaries like Iran are also bracing for dramatic change. Biden has said he'll re-enter the 2015 nuclear agreement that Trump scrapped 2 years ago. So, how will the U.S.'s Middle East policy shape out, especially in that crucial first year? And to answer that, joining me now from Istanbul is Talha Kose. He is the Brussels coordinator at SETA, an economic and political research think tank. And from Doha, Ali Bakir, who is a research assistant professor at Qatar University. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. What could, Ali, Trump's loss mean for kings, crown princes, and emirs in the Gulf? Because Trump made no secrets about his transactional relations with them. So how would a Biden administration will be different, and how could those Gulf leaders respond?
Thank you first for having me. I think the outcome is mixed depending on who you are talking to. If Biden is going to be Obama too, and there is a wide perception that he might likely be Obama too, then we are in a better position to anticipate his policies towards the region. When it comes to Saudi Arabia, I think that Biden will certainly put pressure on the Saudi kingdom on the Yemeni issue, on the Gulf crisis, relations with Iran, internal and external policies. So how the Saudis will respond to this is a little bit difficult to assess due to the irrational behavior of Mohammed bin Salman. But we know that Biden will not be Trump in any way, and there will be no Trump to shield the Saudi crown prince.
Yes.
So probably, yes.
So, Talha, is it likely that foreign policy positions taken by the White House for the last 4 years can be undone, like moving the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, as just Ali mentioned, selling billions of dollars worth of military equipment to Saudi Arabia, for example?
Yes, there will be major changes in foreign policy preferences of the President Biden. He clearly outlined that he will not be supporting the war in Yemen. His policy with regard to Israel will be different. He will not be supporting the settlements, and he will be in favor of a two-state solution. So he also said that he will be supporting the humanitarian aid to Palestinians. So on the other issue, there was a very much central policy of UAE and Saudi Arabia, and in their alliance with Israel in the form, shaping of the Middle East policy. And Netanyahu was at the center of this policy with the support of Jared Kushner. So I think there will be a policy change because those relations with Israel was very much centered on personal relations. He will prefer a more balanced approach. Definitely there will not be too major change, but there will be some transformations in certain areas.
So, Ali, Biden has been quite clear about his support for the Palestinian cause. I mean, he's in favor of two-state solution. He's against the settlement policies. He's against the annexation. So where does this leave Israel and Netanyahu?
Well, look, Israel and Israeli security is always a priority for the U.S. politics and U.S. politicians, regardless of who is in power there. But I don't believe that we will witness a radical change in the U.S. policies towards the Palestinian-Israeli struggle. Of course, Biden will not be Trump, and no one will be able to offer Israel what Trump did. But I don't see him reversing the measures taken by Trump. Probably he will be opposing the Israeli settlement and trying to keep the Arab peace initiatives alive, especially after it's largely became dead after the normalization effort led in the region by the UAE and other states. So I'm not seeing a major change in but for the Palestinians, it's the lesser evil, and it's less destructive than the Trump administration. So this is good.
So, Talha, President Obama's one big legacy in the Middle East was the nuclear deal with Iran signed in 2018, which Trump said the worst deal ever. Is the Biden administration set to take the U.S. back into the agreement in some form? And if the agreement is renewed, let's say, what kind of an impact it would have on Iran's rivals in the region?
I think Biden will definitely return to the Iran nuclear deal, but it will be different at this moment because the context have changed, and Iranian side also abused the agreement. So it's led to expansionism of Iran in Syria, in Yemen, in Iraq. So I think Biden administration will try to return to the Iran nuclear deal, but they will try to also restrict some of the Iranian expansionism. So there will be some change on this line. So there may probably be more balanced approach with Iran, Saudi Arabia, and UAE line. So this may be a little bit more balanced approach, which may also incorporate United States allies, European allies, and allies like Turkey, and put them into picture. So the administration was very much focused on Iran and YPG in their policy lines, especially in the second.
So Ali, do you believe Biden will be able to hold the Saudi crown prince accountable for the brutal murder of the journalist Khashoggi without hurting the US's financial, strategic, and military interests in the region?
Well, this is something to be seen. I mean, it's pretty much early to anticipate how it will be. But as I mentioned before, there will be a lot of pressure on Saudi Arabia, and particularly on the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And it will be up to the Saudis how to react to this pressure. Either they will have to make concessions to the Biden administration, or probably the pressure will push Saudi Arabia towards restoring or re-establishing its relations with Turkey, for example, or another option, maybe Saudi Arabia will be forced to normalize its relations with Israel in order to lessen the pressure, the American pressure on it. So these things are still not yet formed in a better way. We will have to wait and see also how the Congress will act regarding the Saudi Arabia.
So, Talha, Egypt's Sisi has launched a brutal crackdown on dissidents at home. So what's at stake for Egypt and its president under the new Biden administration?
So one of the pillars of the foreign policy for Biden, I mean, he clearly outlined that he will not be supporting the authoritarians, and he will be in favor of more transparent economic situation, and he will try to also emphasize the human rights values that are significant for U.S. foreign policy pillars. So if you take those pillars into account, I think there will be more pressure on Al-Sisi, especially the human rights record, is also questionable. And also there will be some questions with regard to authoritarian aspects. So there may be some sanctions, some diplomatic pressure on Al-Sisi to make some changes in certain practices. So that's why they increased their lobby in Washington. They also made some changes, released some of the prisoners, political prisoners. So they may respond to signal some change in their policies, the Egyptian side. So I don't know how Biden administration will respond to this, but as we remember from the Obama administration, they didn't put too much emphasis and too much pressure on Al-Sisi. So probably they will try a gradual approach with Egypt.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you very much for joining us on Straight Talk.
Thank you very much for hosting. Thank you.
And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Aisha Suberker. If you've got any comments, follow us and tweet us at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, take care and goodbye.